Welcome to Stories Beyond Borders, the podcast where culture, identity, and personal journeys come together. I'm your host, Urmi, and in each episode we sit down with voices from around the world to talk about what it means to belong, to move, to grow, and to find home. Whether you're a third culture kid, an expat, or someone redefining identity on your terms, these are your stories too. Today I'm joined by Tanja, a certified cross-cultural trainer and coach specializing in international career transitions. Originally from Slovenia, she has lived in the USA and now in France with her TCK family. With a rich background in international recruitment, consulting, and career development, Tanja helps individuals and teams navigate the complexity of global careers while also supporting immigrants locally in Strasbourg. I'm very happy to welcome you here with us today, Tanja. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Urmi. Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this with me. It's an honor and pleasure to have you. I know we had a lot of exchanges and this is finally happening. So as I usually ask to all of my guests, my first question is, what is your story?
Oh, wow. That's always a tough question, right? For someone like us who has more than one country to identify with. Well, I have to say, I'll give you a really short version. Born in Slovenia, immigrated to Chicago, then Milwaukee in the US, and then came to France. And I'm in France today. And then in between, I've traveled a lot with my husband. And my family is composed of 5 different nationalities and about 10 different languages. So we we have a lot of fun for Christmas and family reunions.
Okay, you guys are very multicultural in terms of family. And tell me a little bit about what these nationalities are and the languages that you all speak.
Well, first of all, we all speak English because that's pretty much the basic language that we can communicate. My husband, he is from Colombia, and he's also Austrian. He speaks German and Spanish. So we got English, German, Spanish. We've got Swedish. And we've got also the dialect, because in Austria, you probably, if you're listening to this, there's not just the Austrian German, but there's also the dialect. So you've got those languages coming up, and with a new generation, and that's making the family bigger. It just gets bigger, and mushrooms out. So the family gatherings can be quite interesting, funky, dynamic. You never know. Also, you have to always be I have to say on your toes so you don't offend anybody, because we all know who we are and we all know who we're talking to. So we're constantly tiptoeing on broken glass to make sure that we're saying the right thing, because we have, there's the German, for example, is very direct. It's very hard. Slovenian as well, whereas the Spanish and the French is a lot more, there's a lot more nuance in the language and relationship and telling things in a nice, less harmful way. There's a lot of kindness that's involved there. So basically, that's where I come from, and that's my story on a larger scale and what I got into. But I never really dreamed about that. So my story, for the other part, is that I really come from a Slovenian background. My parents are Slovenian. We're all Slovenian, speaking the same language, having the same religion, eating the same thing, going to school. Everything was perfect. And I remember as a little kid, I would be sitting on a cherry tree, eating all those cherries off. And I'd say, God, my life is boring. And I would be looking at the planes flying by. Well, little did I know that I would be being on that plane a lot and being farther from my family that I wished to be. That makes this life of mine challenging, at the same time as very fruitful, very interesting. And so, very naturally, I got into recruitment. Why? Because to finance my studies, I had to work, and where else to work than with my mom in the restaurant, my brother, because, the family that works together stays together. So we worked together, and very naturally, because I was kind of pushed into this, lots of languages and cultures in a restaurant, in which very naturally I was a translator in recruitment interviews, and very naturally I went into recruitment. And from there on, and with the expat and travels, I naturally, after my studies, I worked in Manpower and other small to multinational companies in recruitment, and that's where I am today until recently, where I switched over, where I think in 2017 or 18, the recruitment world went upside down with the World Wide Web and the companies saying, wow, we can use the applicant tracking system and computer and people can go shopping for their job. And that's where things started changing. And that's where I decided to stop, take a step back and get into coaching and start having deeper conversation with people who are looking for jobs, people especially that are bilinguals like me, crossing different cultures, as well as companies who are used to saying, oh, I want someone trilingual who can travel at $20,000 with a little package. So that problematic really bugged me. And I thought, I don't like this anymore. Do I stay or do I go? So I decided to stay on and start up the business. It's called today TP Talks.
Wow, impressive. I do want to go back a little bit on some of the things that you have just said. So I don't know much about Slovenia, if I have to be really honest. So you said you were born there, but did you live there?
Yes, for 10 years.
For 10 years. And then you moved to the States.
Right. But before, Slovenia was never known as an independent country until 1991. It was part of Yugoslavia.
That's right.
And a lot of people, I think you probably have heard, most people have heard Yugoslavia, but ever since a while ago now, in the 90s, you basically had the republics that broke off, and then Slovenia was one of the first ones, I believe, to break off. And so when we talk about Slovenia, some people really don't know it, but if you like Tour de France, the winner this year and last year is a Slovenian, and so Slovenians are really well known in the sport club and the nature field of being quite avant-garde and really big sportmen and sportwomen in the field.
Very interesting. So this is how your journey started. It started from Slovenia, then 10 years after you moved to the States. And my question is, why the States?
As I said before, we immigrated. So in immigration, the story is very different than an expat or a TCA that moves because it's either for, being in the missionary family or a diplomat. We basically escaped. So when we escaped, as a 10-year-old kid, preteen, we escaped. I took a plastic bag and a book and a dolly, and that was it. So we escaped, and when we came to the States, I didn't speak one word of English, nor my brother and my mother. So we were in a situation where it was, it was exciting because we did have already, my mother had her parents and her great aunt there, but the whole transition wasn't like I had the opportunity later on as an expat to have a nice expat package and then leave over. So it was a very, very different times and a different trip.
Definitely. Oh, that's so interesting. And then in the States, how long did you stay?
Oh boy, over 25 years.
Okay.
So I basically grew up, went to school there. And what's interesting is that even though we were the immigrants, we had what I would honestly call is like a dual life where, at home, we continue to speak Slovenian, we continue to sleep, eat, pray, whatnot in Slovenian. So we had like a little Slovenia at home with a family, with a nuclear family. But as soon as we left that tight community and family, it was American, and being 10 years old and then learning the language. And at that time also you had the Cold War that was around. So people didn't really know what Yugoslavia was. So in school I was really, I didn't know until recently that I was really bullied, and people called me a communist, a commie. So that was not just being a teenager on an individual level and then having this dual world, but in school I was also called a communist, which at first, I kind of took it with a smile and a stride, but I actually later on in life I thought, that wasn't that nice. But
Mm-hmm.
fortunately, I realized later on in life, but it was tough. It was tough, especially because my brother and I, we were always used to speaking Slovenian to one another. And we continue a little bit in school in a closed way, but my family always said, when you're out there, you be like them, and you're not different. But sometimes my brother and I, we want to share a secret or something, we'd say in Slovenian, and then sometimes nobody would hear us. But when they heard us, they're like, "Oh, look, the commies are speaking Russian." But we're like, "We're not Russian. We're not commies. What's going on here?" So it was like, what is going on here? So it was always it was tough. I'm not going to say it was easy. It was tough, but with hindsight, of course, as time goes on, that wound gets smaller, but it's still there, and you're able to see, like, okay, this is what happened. This is what went on. I'm still alive, although being a teenager in this type of milieu is quite challenging.
I agree. I agree. It's quite challenging. And, when you're a kid and you hear certain comments, maybe you don't understand them right away. But like you said, once you grow, it hits you and you're like, okay, some of those things were not correct to me. It's like you said, that you're being bullied and you were not able to realize it. And also, like, your parents telling you, like, be like them. This is one
Right.
thing that I don't know if I quite agree with that sentence when I hear it, be like them, like, why do we have to be like them, And this is not in reference to the States. This is just in reference to everything, why do we have to
Right.
be like them? And I mean, you did spend quite a bit of time in the States, and now you have moved to Europe, you said, if I'm not mistaken.
In France.
In France, that's right, yes. And what made you go to France?
There was an expatriation opportunity that my husband had, and when I, in my heart of hearts, I always wanted to go back home. But when I went back home each time for summertime, that wasn't. I mean, I love coming back home, but I wasn't the same anymore. But I knew that in my heart of hearts, that's where I belong. So, either through my job at Manpower or Rockwell or my husband's, we both always stayed with multinationals. We thought we're going to listen and always check if there's a mobility opportunity. Well, my husband was the first one, and since he's in sales, international sales director, they basically told him, yeah, you go out there and you develop the territory, and you can choose between Italy, France, or Belgium. And we chose France.
Okay, so I do have another question about that, because you said to go back home. And I had so many questions thinking, but what is home for you? Because, you spent so many years in the States. So definitely you're not going back to the States since you were leaving the States.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming you meant Slovenia as being your home, but then feeling like it was a foreign land when you went back. Is that what you were trying to say when you said going back home?
Right. In a sense, it's like, trying to go back to a place and time that I remember as a 0 to 10-year-old,
Yeah.
where in fact, I was looking not so much for a place or a country, but I was looking for, my grandmother, that I would, because my grandmother was like my second mother, having a moment with her in the evening when I had my little fruit smoothie and we watched television, and then we went out to the forest and picked mushrooms, and then during the summer to go to the seaside. I was like looking not only for the places, but the places, the people, and the moments that made me feel so fuzzy, warm, and cozy, when in fact, it wasn't the case anymore. And that's where I was really stuck for a long time. You could call it trauma or confusion or depression. I mean, you label it what you want to, but I was like, a bit looking for that, as if I needed that to kind of center myself. But with time and a lot of work and being an introvert, and very naturally, I took the long way to figure out that, okay, I'm at this age now. I can't repeat what happened in the past. I have to make new memories. And that was really hard. That was really hard to go back and make amends and make peace with it and start to make new memories where my heart is. So that was a tough one, because I'm not going to say I did it alone. It took a village from good friends, a good community, and well, I'm going to say a therapist too. I think it takes a village to put me together, and yeah, and I really believe that. That's kind of in the heart also in the company that I have, and it's hence teepee talks, the teepee, the little teepee that Indians put up. I put up a teepee for a long time until I realized that teepee is a bit moldy and it's not working for me anymore, so I needed to change, but the teepee is always there. So yeah, so to answer your question is to kind of make amends, say this is what happened, and let's start where I am with what I have and go forward with what is right underneath my nose and just move and stop being stuck in my brain.
Yeah. And what I find interesting about you moving around is that when you first moved from Slovenia to the States, you were quite young, and I feel like you go through a certain type of experience, but when you become an adult, you go through another type of experience, because stuff, you have lived through stuff. And I feel like you just really lived through a different experience. And I want to know a little bit about you, like going to France and how it was for you to settle down there.
It was horrible. Because in my little mind, I took French in high school and then at the university, and I loved Balzac and the arts and Louvre and I could speak it, and then once I got there, Balzac did not help me to find the job or get the diapers or the doctor. I was just totally flabbergasted. And on top of it, we were not in a big city. We weren't in Paris, Lyon, or somewhere big where there's other expats. We were in Nancy. It's between Strasbourg and Paris, in the middle of nowhere. So it took us, because So here's my husband, who's also a TCK, Austrian, Colombian, U.S. American, me, the Slovenian U.S. American. Then you've got the kids who were born in the States and now they're coming with us, and being a small town, you look like a pink elephant with one eye and 5 feet. And so each time we were speaking any language, because for us, we were we had an organization to languages. We would go out and talk and eat, have a pizza. And I remember having a pizza, sitting down, and everybody looking at us. I'm like, what are you doing? And so for 3 years, this was really tough. And we had a lot of tough moments, but those tough moments taught us also to be together, support one another, and identify some people. There was not a big expat community there, but through school and then eventually through work, I think we found 3 or 4 other expats, but they moved back and forth. And then finally, after 3 years, after the language got in, we all figured out, as a professional, how do I speak? As a mom, how do I speak? Because I used to, both of my girls went to a Montessori school, and now they're going to a French school. And I used to just let them go by themselves to school. And then I remember picking them up and the French mother saying, "Oh, voilà la maman en gras," the poor mother, and I fortunately I didn't understand because they spoke quickly, and I'm like, thank God, because I probably would have had a moment, but all of that was really tough. And yeah, we could have left. The 2 people that I really got attached to, they left within 6 to 9 months. We held in because we really knew that we wanted to stick around. So yeah, to make a long story short, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, and it's very interesting everything you shared so far, and I was picturing you, when you were sending your kids to school, and this lady making this comment, and I can picture this lady making this type of comment with her expression and everything, and it's not easy. And then of course, there is the language barrier, which is of course not easy too. You have to start from scratch. And which brings me to my next question: do you see yourself moving one more time? Since you have done it so many times, do you see yourself going to another part of the world?
Everything's possible. I used to not say this, to tell you the truth. If you asked me this 10 years ago, when we went somewhere else, I would have said, God, no, I don't want to move anymore. I just want to stay in my teepee forever. But actually, now that, how can I say, now I'm almost like, looking forward to it, because there could be another opportunity out in Asia. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, why not?
Never say never.
Right.
Never say never. So, Tanja, as we're approaching the end of this conversation, I do want to ask you if there is a message that you want to leave us, that you want to give us today, maybe something related to the conversation that we have, especially because you have moved around and that comes with a lot of challenges. But maybe if you can share like a lesson learned, something that we can take away from this conversation today.
Oh, that's a good question. Always a tough question too. I would say, trust yourself. Start where you are. Do what you can. And it's usually right underneath your nose. And take just a little mini test, mini step, mini test, and see how it goes. And trust yourself. It's going to be okay.
Lovely. Trust yourself. I love it. Well, Tanja, thank you so much for coming today. Before I let you go, do you want to tell us how people can connect with you?
Yes, you can actually find me on LinkedIn, where I basically post on a daily basis, either in English and then in French, as well as Instagram. And I have a website that's called tptalks.com.
Lovely. Well, thank you again for coming. It was such an honor and pleasure having you with us today. Thanks for listening to this episode of Stories Beyond Borders. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a story. Until next time, keep crossing borders and telling your story.